When you think of a ROM hack, what are some of the different descriptors that come to mind? Maybe you think of difficult games like Pokemon Run and Bun, or even the recently released Platinum Kaizo, pushing the boundaries with fights crafted around testing the fullest extent of a battle. Maybe you think of Chaotic, with too many types, or Super Mario Mon, throwing the normal rules of Pokemon out the window in favor of trying out new concepts and ideas. How about even replayability? You have the likes of Pokemon Emerald Rogue, or the plethora of different randomizer settings that allow you to get playthroughs that are just never the same as the one you did previously. This is Pokemon Emerald Blitz, a ROM hack that contains elements of these three conventional descriptions, while also introducing a few words that might not come to mind at first go. Fast, dynamic, and competitive. Let's start with the new words. Fast. Emerald Blitz cuts away all of the normal Emerald beats, and it boils it down to 13 fights. The 8 gyms, the Elite Four, and the Champion. Emerald Blitz also incorporates a lot of tools for map movement to speed up the game even further. We'll get into those a little more in a little bit, but just know that the game can be beaten from start to finish in less than 3 hours, with the fastest times being almost under an hour in some cases. But make no mistake, this isn't going to be a cakewalk. This also kind of ties in with difficult, because each of the fights have also been revamped to include type coverages and strategies that'll require careful planning, and a little bit of luck to overcome. Next, let's talk about dynamic. Right after you name your character, you immediately start off in your bedroom, where you have access to a notebook with every single Pokemon that is available to the player at the tips of your fingers. With continued support from lead developer Nathan, this selection is always expanding, and it goes hand in hand with Chaotic. You can mix and match to play with your current favorites, learn about new ones, or even randomly select a complete box of Pokemon to create an infinite amount of ways to play Emerald Blitz. Finally, and in my opinion most importantly, there's competitive. Emerald Blitz was designed with a companion website that allows you to create an auction in order to draft the Pokemon you use in your run. And with fellow participating players in the same auction, you get a race against one another to see who can get the furthest and the fastest. A link to the Emerald Blitz website will be in the description. Please check it out, as it contains instructions on how to play Emerald Blitz yourself, as well as provide documentation on necessary information regarding both the draft and the game itself. There'll also be a link to the Emerald Blitz Discord, where you can join public races that take place pretty much every day and hang out with the community. I myself have been a frequent participant, and I think what better way to embody replayability than being able to make new friends and compete to see who's the best. Let's start at the beginning. How the auction works is pretty simple. Everyone is given the same starting amount of money, and whoever has the highest bid at the end of the time limit earns the Pokemon. Rinse and repeat until the last Pokemon is won. For this race, there's myself and 5 other runners. The standard number for Emerald Blitz is that each racer starts off with $20,000, and there will be 8 times the number of racers, in this case 48 Pokemon available for auction. This will be important as there are over 150 Pokemon from across all generations currently implemented in Emerald Blitz, so we're only going to be seeing a fraction of the total pool. Also, Emerald Blitz is built with mechanics all the way up to Gen 9, and even includes the most recent Legends Z8 Mega Evolutions. Shoutouts to lead developer Nathan for really getting on top of getting as up to date as possible with Emerald Blitz. I could go over drafting philosophy and practices for hours on end. The dynamics of the draft are an aspect I've been infatuated with ever since my first ever race during the holidays. However, we do need to take the show on the road, so I'll only note 3 core principles of my drafting philosophy and how they're applied in this specific race. So first, I draft 2 waters and 2 grass. Water and grass are the most abundant types just in the entire Pokemon continuity, and in Emerald Blitz. Having an extra Pokemon in these types means I'm not put in a pinch if my main go-to ends up going down in an unexpected situation. Secondly, I bid for Pokemon that can fill multiple roles, but have the ability to fill those roles incredibly deep. With only a finite amount of money, we're not going to be able to have an answer for every situation. But if we can find Pokemon that are flexible in filling multiple gaps, but also do those gap fillers incredibly resourcefully, we can be in a spot where later on we might not have to draft a specific draft counter for the rest of the fights. Lastly, we want to maintain some high level of prerogative. The definition of prerogative is an exclusive right granted to a person due to their position. In Emerald Blitz, this special right is the ability to outbid other racers for certain Pokemon due to holding a certain amount of money above racers who may also want that Pokemon. It can be kind of easy to fixate on wanting to go for a strong Pokemon, and this can lead to you potentially overpaying in the short term, which comes at the cost of being in a position later on where we might not be able to get another chain of Pokemon without having to kind of overextend each time. By maintaining prerogative, we're always able to make sure that we have enough money to get the Pokemon that we need, while trying to keep enough wiggle room so that if we do have to overpay, we're not completely shut out of the rest of the draft. With these principles in mind, let's dive straight into the draft. The first Pokemon I wanted to draft shows up as the 5th Pokemon in this auction, Execute. Execute is primarily a grass type, which helps out with Principle 1, and has access to evolving into either form of Executor. In Kanto form, we have a bulkier, more supportive Anchor, and in Alolan form, we have a harder hitting carry option. This type of flexibility is great for Principle 2, as being able to lean into a specific style of Executor based on how we're doing in the race is going to allow me to set up certain strategies and lines that could probably get us through a fight way safer. For only 2,600, this is also a great value. We put ourselves on the board with our first draft pick, but we also still have plenty of money to play the rest of this draft without being in overpay range. Right off the heels of Execute comes Bounce Sweep. In theory, I could pick up Bounce Sweep right now. Serena is a solid second grass type, and it has a physical sweeper style that could allow me to lean into Executor in Kanto form. However, we don't really want to spread ourselves too thin too quickly, and I feel like letting this go for now is going to give us an opportunity to contest our Pokemon later in the draft. As we continue to let a few... hang on. The scene feels a little empty. I think I know what'll break things up. Kagari? Ah, there we go. So anyways, as we continue to let a few more Pokemon go by, we occasionally throw out a bid just to see if we can snag something at a low cost. We don't really plan to go in until at the 13th pick when we see a Gothita. Gothitel's defensive bulk and flexible moveset fill in as a special wall, which will also play nicely alongside Alolan Executor's more offensive versatility. At only 1,600, this is also an insane steal, so much so that we maintain really strong prerogative by staying near the rest of the races in terms of available money. 3 picks later, and Litwick appears. Chandelure is one of the most highly regarded Pokemon in Emerald Blitz, thanks in large part to its great typing and powerful special sweeping capabilities. The Emerald Blitz community has a tier list which is also on the website, showing how highly rated certain Pokemon are, and many would clamor for a chance to pick one of the high tiers if they pull up in the draft. We also throw a couple bids ourselves, but we don't really plan to fully commit because we're only a third of the way into the draft, and if we spend a lot of money now, that's going to have repercussions in us having to fill out the rest of the weaknesses later on in the draft. That being said, when Machop comes up with the very next pick, I'm really interested in acquiring it. We don't really have a dedicated physical sweeper in our draft, and Machamp has a respectable bulk so that it can take a hit on the switch-in before winding up with a solid retaliation. We also get Machop for only $1,500, which is another steal that's going to keep us well within the main crowd's average money pool. We haven't really seen that many water types in this draft, with the only one at this point being a Feebas that we lately fished for, but we didn't really contest too much for it. Wishy-Washy comes down as the second water type of the draft at number 19, and we're definitely looking to pick it up. Wishy-Washy's ability Schooling gives him a massive stat increase while above 75% health once we get to level 20 onwards. The rest of our team also doesn't come online until much later in the race, so having a Pokemon who can help anchor the early and mid game is going to be an invaluable ally for our team. For $3,000, we ended up paying a little more than I expected, but thankfully the money that we saved from getting Machop and Gothita for pretty good bargains are going to allow us to offset the difference. It's not a bad first water type core. Okay, We're less than halfway through the draft, and we currently have 4 Pokemon on our team. If we proceed at this pace, we should anticipate getting 8 drafted Pokemon, which is precisely average. We also have a bit more than half of our budget still ready to spend, so we can chill out, and then when we see a good quality Pokemon, we can spend a little bit bigger, just with our prerogative. Let's chill for a bit for now though, and we'll just let the draft play out. 10 picks later, and we haven't really seen that many Pokemon that I felt adamant about picking up. Sure, there are a couple that I tossed my hat into the ring for, but I'm really hoping that we find a Pokemon that... Oh, we are so back. Oddish is one of my favorite special sweepers in Emerald Blitz. Bellossom's final moveset gets to include Quiver Dance, easily one of the premier setup moves. An important factor I should mention is that stat increases are capped out at only +1, so Quiver Dance being able to push 3 stats up to the max is already incredibly powerful. Combine that with Stab Giga Drain, access to fairy moves like Dazzling Gleam, and even some deceptive bulkiness with access to Moonlight, we have ourselves a devastating little flower. On top of that, we only really need to spend 2,600, which is still on average, but like as this draft is progressing, these little advantages that we make are just going to keep adding up and up as we get closer to the end of the draft. As we just passed over the 2/3 mark of the draft, Tentacool comes up and is one of the better secondary water types for my team. We have access to Toxic Spikes fresh out of the box, one of the few hazards that the player can set up, as well as a fantastic typing and special ball. In the late game, Tentacool transitions to a fast special sweeper role, and so far all of my Pokemon are a bit on the slower side, so having methods of fast sweeping are gonna be pretty invaluable to me. As their name implies, we also pitch a cool $2,600 for our Squid. Surprisingly cheaper than I anticipated, but again, money saved here is going to allow us to get really aggressive in the endgame. Let's take a step back and observe the state of the draft to understand how positioning and prerogative will shape the way these final 16 Pokemon will be chosen. We currently have 6 Pokemon drafted with only $6,100 remaining. The only racers with more money available are Cheech with 8,000, Jason with 12,300, and Zam with 7,600. Jason and Zam have less Pokemon drafted at only 4 apiece, so they'll naturally want to be more aggressive in the final third of the draft, and they have the money to back up their aggression. Meanwhile, Cheech has 6 Pokemon drafted alongside me, and there's also Awesome with 5 Pokemon drafted and $5,400. Both of which are going to be able to contest me if I make my intentions a little too obvious on who I want to draft. Lastly, there's Flippy Spatula, who only has $2,300 remaining, but they've already picked up 8 Pokemon, and their role in the draft is going to be keeping everyone else honest for higher quality Pokemon, since they can all in their budget to force any other racer to pay above $2,300 at any given point. Flippy's position means that we're not going to be able to snipe out some good bargain picks like we did with Machop and Gothita, but at this point in the draft, that's not really our high priority. In terms of our team, we have our 2 water and 2 grass Pokemon, allowing us to keep our main core intact. In terms of the various roles that my team can fill out, we currently don't have many physical sweeping, physical bulky, or fast Pokemon to slot into. So going into the final 16 of the draft, ideally we're going to be looking for Pokemon that are physically strong, preferring one that's bulky and then one that's fast in order to help cover the gaps in my team's composition. The first big domino of note happens on Pokemon 36, with Hawlucha making an appearance. On paper, this would fill out as a fast physical sweeper for my team, however, Cheech ends up picking it up for $3,100, over half of my remaining budget. We decided not to contest the bid for the Luchador, as this is going to put Cheech at $4,900 with 12 Pokemon remaining in the draft, and I feel like the patience is going to pay off big time closer to the end. One pick later, Flippy decides to go all in on Diglett as their final pick. This is going to open up the door for the rest of the racers to play a little bit more frugally with their money, because now there's not going to be any pressure for this good Pokemon has a minimum cost to entry in order to begin bidding. The 40th pick of the draft is Drillbur, another of the high-tier Pokemon in Emerald Blitz. We see Zam immediately slam all of their money for the all-in, but Jason's gonna decide to use their prerogative and successfully get the mole for $4,600. With only 8 Pokemon left to choose from, Jason choosing to utilize their financial lead here on a Pokemon that both fills in a key role for their team and is a high tier pick perfectly demonstrates what holding prerogative late in the draft affords you. We don't really have a good move until we get to the 42nd pick in Zora. Even though the stat spread shows Zoroark being a bit more of a special attacker, the Illusion Pokemon still has a respectable physical attack, and being fast at this moment is a lot more important for our team composition. Additionally, Zoroark works with Gothitelle and Machamp to form a solid fighting Psychic Dark Core. We end up acquiring Zora for $1,900 after outbidding Cheap's All In. Interestingly enough, Austin makes the following comment.
You're not getting this one.
Oh, yes, Kagami, you have handed me prerogative on a silver platter.
Which is true, we do end up giving Austin prerogative in order to fill out a spot on our team. However, if we choose not to use it now, then we're gonna inevitably lose it when the final Pokemon is shown, and we're gonna have to all in there anyways. In this situation, we'd rather be in a slightly weaker draft position if it means we can bolster our team in the short term. We let Temple, Tyrant, and Weedle get drafted by Sam, Chief, and Jason respectively as they choose their final Pokemon to go all in for in the draft. Even though all 3 of these Pokemon are all physical attackers that fill in the aforementioned gap in my team composition, Seismitoad and Tyranitar even being bulky to further fill in that vacancy, let's go over some of the reasons why I end up not going for any of them. Temple was acquired by Zam, who had $4,500 remaining, strictly more than my $4,200, so I was just outbid there. Tyrant was picked up by Jason, and initially I placed a bid for $1,900 before Jason went all in with their $2,600. Reevaluating my current team, I realized I needed to fill in the physical bulky type of Pokemon, specifically during the time where Machamp wasn't going to be online, which is going to be closer to the end of the game. Even if the Pokemon that I draft doesn't have a clear use during that late game themselves, I just needed something that would give me enough time to anchor while I wait for Machamp to get fully evolved. Tyrant doesn't really get it online himself until about the mid-game, and being in another mid-game Pokemon means that we're still severely lacking in early game in order to try and afford another scaling thing. So it's kind of this risky situation, but we kind of have to let it go because we just need something that'll help keep us in the early game safe enough so that we can get scaled in the late game. Well then, what about Weedle? Beedrill is ready to go in the early game, is a physical attacking machine, and it also happens to be fast. While these are all valid and true observations to make, if we take a look at the draft screen, we can see the list of key moves that a Pokemon has access to. This isn't necessarily all of the moves that a Pokemon aren't going to know, but just the ones that are worth highlighting. As we read the key moves list, you'll notice that the next key move Beedrill will learn is not until level 29 with Toxic Spikes, and much of the other key moves are going to be TMs. The majority of the TMs are not available until the mid-game, so it actually puts our B in a similar situation as Tyrant, where we're not going to be in a strong position until the mid-game, in a box that already needs to get to the mid-game to come online. With that, we are down to the penultimate pick in the draft, Stuffle. There's only Austin and me left with money, and Austin's comment about handing them prerogative are ringing in the back of my mind now. I don't have a say in whether I get the Stuffle or not, and the ball is in Austin's court to decide if they want to full send here or bank on the final Pokemon in the draft. Looking at Austin's draft, they already have both a normal and a fighting Pokemon, and this is enough to sway them to let me have the Stuffle. While we didn't really have a firm place for Stuffle in our team, he'll serve as a respectably bulky fighting type to help anchor our team while we're waiting for Machamp. The fluffy ability is also going to pay dividends for increasing the physical bulk for our flailing Pokemon. After the draft is completed, we can load up Emerald Blitz the game, use the notebook in our room to select the Pokemon acquired from the draft, and add them to our party. We're also met with a seemingly innocuous question that leads to a choice between Wally or Steven. Emerald Blitz gives you the chance of which champion you wish to fight. Steven has a team reminiscent of his Ruby Sapphire champion team, albeit with a few new bells and whistles, while Wally has a team akin to what you would normally see in a Victory Road rematch. You'll notice that their ace is a Megastone. Yeah, that's correct. That's gonna be the main threat that you're gonna have to focus on taking down. Looking at our team, we see that we don't really have a strong matchup into Steven, but we do have some interesting lineups that can maybe take down Wally. For this race, we're gonna need to make sure that as many of our Pokemon withstand the 8 gyms so that we can craft that good final team for Wally. Before we take a closer look at our team, I should also mention that we're given an Eevee as a starter, and that's gonna give us another decision to make in the mid-game. Taking a look at our opening stats and IVs, we don't really have that many standouts in terms of numbers. They aren't terrible by any means, but we're not exactly rocking with like some premier GMO beasts out here either. It's not going to be too much of an issue. Our job isn't really to complain about the flaws of our Pokemon. Instead, we're going to try and help them flourish by setting them up for success in this race. After a little bit of waiting in front of the door, Jason delivers a countdown and the race officially begins. The key method of travel in Emerald Blitz is the Flygon, which is way faster than a normal bike, and also I think it's pretty snazzy since you can change the color of your trainer, and the Flygon will actually match your palette. The key movement changes for the Flygon are the abilities to jump up and down ledges and fly over shallow bodies of water, which is going to allow us to cut down on movement and really speed our way to the first gym in Rustboro City. Along the way, we pick up a few Oran Berries and a Heart Scale, as well as stop by the Flower Shop, which now doubles as a berry shop to pick up a few more Oran Berries. From here, it's pretty much a breeze over some water and we can sprint straight into the gym. Roxanne leads off with a Geodude, and we have a Mega Drain from Execute that's going to get the one-hit KO. Next is going to come Hisuian Growlithe? We aren't the only ones getting new toys in Emerald Blitz. Every gym leader has been given updated rosters to provide an extra bit of challenge to the racers. Not to worry, we can just switch into Wishy-Washy. Surely this will be fine. Okay. Woo! We definitely were playing into so many possible ways for that to actually go wrong, but it's fine. Now we just need to switch back into Execute on the Nose Pass and we can finish this fight off pretty cleanly. After obtaining our first badge, we can hop on our Flygon and use another of its unique abilities to fly to places that we've previously visited. Here's a good time to also mention that gyms are actually randomized. It was a complete coincidence that Roxanne happened to be in Rustboro City. While I'm also here, I should also mention that each gym fight has a level cap, but the level cap is based on the number of badges you currently have. Each gym leader has a specific team that they'll use for a specific badge fight. All of this information will be on the Emerald Blitz website. Much of the split into the race is going to be about running to all of the cities with gyms so that we can fly back to each gym in succession to just kind of chain fight each one. Along the way, we pick up a Heart Scale north of Dewford Town and 2 more south of Slateport City. We end up touching each of the cities en route to Lava Ridge Town, where we just kind of run straight into the gym. As we enter Lava Ridge, we actually see the layout for Norman's gym appear. One last time, I swear this will be the last time that I jump scared you with information that I kind of intentionally withheld just for the sake of kind of supplying the plot of this video. We have a portable PC, a portable healing center, and unlimited rare candies just so we don't have to worry about preparing the team before entering the gym. We can just kind of run straight into the back, and before we talk to the gym leader, we can set up our team, heal up, and be ready to go. The Norman 2 battle is going to be fairly interesting as we have Stuffle and Machop who are going to match up well in this fight. That being said, it's not going to be a complete cakewalk as the Ace Vigoroth is still going to hit incredibly hard and has way higher base stats than anything we currently have on the team. We kick things off with Machop vs Spinda, and thankfully we hit through 2 turns of confusion and even snap out on the 3rd to go damageless going into the Ace Vigoroth. This face-off gets a little bit dicey as we trade blows. Machop even falls to 5 HP in order to get 2 low sweeps off to ensure we have speed control. A switch into Fluffle allows us to clean up the ace, taking little damage thanks to the Fluffy ability. As Galarian Zigzagoon comes forth, we have to respect the possibility of this actually being Hisui and Zorua, so we switch into Oddish to attempt to dispel the illusion. We're pretty rewarded for this cautious approach, so we can then switch into Eevee, who can clean up. Right, so Runaway has been changed in Emerald Blitz to act similarly to Golisopod's emergency exit. A few other abilities have actually been reworked to change up the dynamics of the game, but we'll go over some of the more important ones as they come up. All you need to know for now is that we're gonna go have Stuffle come back and clean things up instead, and with only the real Galarian Zigzagoon left, we have a clean endgame with Stuffle's Fluffy walling out the incoming attacks, and we can obtain our second gym badge with no issues. Before we take on the third gym, let's take a pit stop at Slateport City. Slateport's going to be the central location for the core NPC amenities, and they gradually unlock more and more utility as we progress further into the game. For earning our second gym badge, we unlock the Guru, who enables certain Pokemon who meet a specific criteria to evolve earlier than normal. One such Pokemon on our team is Gothita, who's now able to evolve into Gothorita, which is going to provide us a pretty good boost in base stats for this little mid-game section of the game. We also stop by one of the merchants who sells important items that allow us to change the abilities of our Pokemon, even to hidden abilities with a more expensive changer, as well as a serious mint that's going to change our Pokemon's nature to a neutral nature. We invest a little bit of our money in order to buy 2 ability capsules, allowing us to change Gothorita's ability from competitive to Frisk, which might come in handy in the future, as well as changing Machop from No Guard to the favorable Guts. One other NPC in Slateport City allows us to inflict a status condition to our Pokemon, which lets us pre-burn our Machop up, which is going to let us have battles with Guts enabled, which is even more augmented by the recently acquired Facade TM. With this little shopping interlude completed, let's head back to Mauville City and try and see what our third badge looks like. We enter into Mauville City's gym, but we actually end up seeing Winona's gym. We evolve Oddish into Gloom, but we don't actually have a Pokemon with a firm type advantage in this gym. However, one interesting little quirk that we end up having is Gothorita learns Rock Tomb through the TM that we got from Roxanne. So we're going to have Gothorita and Wishy-Washy with schooling now enabled to do a lot of heavy lifting for us in this gym. Off the bat, the Rock Tomb Gothorita is paying dividends on the opening Swablu. It's kind of important to note that Winona chooses to use her only potion on Swablu, which means that for the rest of the Pokemon in the back, we no longer have to worry about playing around any heal ranges. As Swablu falls, the Ace Tropius comes out and is looking to set up Sunny Day so that it can outspeed the rest of my team with Chlorophyll. We choose to switch into Eevee while Tropius sets up the Sun. With the move Baby Doll Eyes, we're able to move first and lower Tropius' attack stats, softening up the physical hits coming our way. With a few physical drops, we're able to switch back into Gothorita, whose Frisk activates, allowing us to steal the Tropius' held Citrus Berry. Stealing the Citrus Berry allows Gothorita to stay at a high enough HP where she's able to then fire back an important Rock Tomb crit that, after switching into Tentacool on the following turn, allows us to clean up the kill with 3 Acid Sprays. Swallow comes out to finish off our injured Squid, but a switch into Schooling Wishy-Washy is not only able to tank the hits with its massive bulk, but it's also able to fire back some pretty powerful shots, allowing us to successfully complete a good 1v1. All that's left in the back is a Wingull, and for that we're going to switch into... Execute? So even though we have Zora in the back, we still had 4 Pokemon weak to flying types in our draft, which was going to make it inevitable that we would have to bring at least 1 Pokemon to the gym in order to have a full team of 6. Instead, we decided to play into the fact that Wingull doesn't really have a high attacking stat in order to leverage some HP on Execute to bait Wing Attack onto Eevee. Once we get to this position, 2 more Baby Doll Eyes would force Wingull to choose to either attempt to confuse with Supersonic, or fire off water pulses into our grass types that we chose to bring in Execute and Gloom. Whenever one of them got confused, we would be able to switch to the other and utilize Mega Drain and Leech Seed in order to keep our health topped off, or we would use Stun Spore in order to get speed control. In either case, it takes a few extra turns, but we eventually do get our third badge. The final gym we fly back to in this mini gauntlet is going to be Town, and Brawly's actually back in his own gym this time around. He's going to have a few new tricks up his sleeve, which I guess he got from whatever training session he was doing in Granite Cave. We have a lot of Pokemon that resist a lot of moves that Brawly's going to have, but in terms of offensive prowess, we're going to really rely on our newly evolved Beware and the Aerial Ace TM that we got from Winona in order to put in some heavy carry duty in order to get us above the halfway point. Gothorita opens up with a fake Tears and a Psybeam combo to take out the Machoke, bringing in Galarian Farfetch. The first test for our Beware is passed with flying colors as the Aerial Ace knocks the Farfetch into heal range, causing Brawly to expend his only healing item, and letting Brawly take the frag, only taking less than 20 damage in the scrap. Big Hariyama comes out, but a crit sets up a range where despite our bare speed time with the Sumo, we get enough chip for Tentacool to get... For Gothorita... for Gloom to clean up, it's a little bit closer than it needed to be, thanks to a crit dragging Gloom to 10 HP. But last on the team is High Jump Kick Meditite, which gets packed up by Execute, and we get our fourth badge, where the training weights on our team really comes off. Okay, now that we have 4 gym badges, let's head back to Slateport City for a shopping trip. The NPCs have a pretty big inventory upgrade with more TMs and evolution stones now available for purchase. One of the big mid-game decisions in Emerald Blitz we need to discuss is which evolution you want to claim. At the start of the race, every racer is guaranteed an Eevee regardless of their draft, and one of the benefits of performing well in the early game is priority to claiming an evolution. Once an evolution has been claimed, no other racer is allowed to utilize that evolution. We're actually the 3rd or 4th racer to get to the evolution claim, meaning we might not have our pick of the litter, but there should still be enough options available to fill out our team. We buy a Moonstone to claim Umbreon, who will serve as one of our anchors. We also buy a Leaf Stone for Kanto Executor and a Sunstone for Bellossom, getting a lot of our core members online. Keep in mind that you only have a finite amount of money from defeating the gym leaders to buy any evolution items and TMs, so budgeting is going to become a key factor. With the last Poke dollars we have on hand, we buy a Snarl TM for Umbreon and a Giga Drain TM before flying back to Petalburg City. As we enter Petalburg City's gym and see the Moss Deep gym puzzle, we're completely ecstatic because Tate and Liza 5 is going to be an insanely free fight for our team. We have access to both Umbreon and a newly evolved Zoroark to capitalize on the type advantage, and this is going to result in some really cool shenanigans that we can do involving illusion. We open with Zoroark disguised as Bellossom thanks to its illusion ability and Executor in order to set up a fast knock on the Xatu thanks to a Night Slash crit. We also want to set up a Stun Spore on the Voltoy in order to leave the battlefield in a permanent 2v1 that's kind of free for us. Well, we missed the Stun Spore, but because they chose not to break the illusion, the incoming Lunatone is going to see Icy Wind because there are 2 grass types on the field. But the speed control is not going to matter because once we double strike with Night Slash and Mega Drain into the Lunatone, Lunatone is forced to use one of the 2 healing items, essentially passing, and without the Citrus Berry, we're able to do the double strike again and successfully get the kill. Now left with only Baltoy and Solrock to deal with, we tag out Zoroark for our other ace, Umbreon. Solrock is going to use Incinerate to burn both of the Oran Berries, but Executor tosses down a Leech Seed to provide continuous sustain for the rest of the fight. All that's left from here is for Umbreon to use Snarl to hit both Pokemon and lower their special attack, decreasing the overall damage output from the opponent, and for Executor to stay topped off with Mega Drains and provide potential speed control with Stun Spore, and this fight is pretty much wrapped up, giving us our 5th badge. Now that we've claimed the 5th badge, Flygon overcomes its fear of water, and we have access to the rest of the map now that we can surf across larger bodies of water. On our way to Fort Tree City, we pick up another heart scale, and we pick up the first 6 citrus berries that we have access to before heading to Fort Tree's gym. We enter Fort Tree City's gym, but we see Mauville City's gym puzzle, meaning we're about to face up against a Watson 6. Our team is actually quite vulnerable to paralysis, but with access to both citrus berries and Umbreon learning Moonlight during the split, we at least have a few ways to keep our health good enough to buy time, as long as the luck kinda rolls in our favor. Exeggutor is going to be our lead into the Alolan Graveler who wants to set up a Stealth Rocks. While we can't prevent the rocks from being set up, we are able to force the first healing item to be used on Graveler and take it out without taking any damage ourselves. When the Ace Manectric comes out, all we need to do is set up a Leech Seed and we out-sustain the incoming damage output, crucially forcing a second healing item while taking out the Sparking Dog with ease. Exeggutor's final contributions to the fight are to set up one final Leech Seed on the Magneton, and a little bit of Chip to allow Umbreon to clean up the matchup. Let's not talk about that random crit. Originally, I wanted to leverage Beware's HP to fight the Hisuian Electrode, until a crit caused me to change up the plan for Gothorita to step in. And then another crit on Gothorita meant I didn't get as much chip as I would like, and that means that our last ditch is to go back into Umbreon and use a combination of Moonlight to maximize our HP, and Assurance to take the ball down. We couldn't really use Snarl because Electrode's soundproof ability stops sound moves from having any effect at all. The final Pokemon is Alolan Raichu, which was originally going to be dealt with using Umbreon. However, due to the low amount of HP remaining, because we had to do all of the pivoting for Electrode, we end up having to use a combination of Bellossom and Zoroark to finish off the fight. Still a little bit awkward, but it's still a good enough safety option. Now that we have 6 badges, we're now able to fly to any city on the map, except for Evergrande City. We also unlock another tier of purchasable items, notably Citrus and Lum Berries from the flower shop back on Route 104, and the Linking Cord, which allows us to finally evolve our Machop into a full Machamp. We pull up to Mosti City and see the Sootopolis City gym puzzle. This is going to be another gym that our box has a lot of really good matchups into, and we also get to utilize our Tentacruel for a pretty unique setup to start this fight. Just check this out. We lead with Exeggutor and Tentacruel against the Commander Dondozo Tatsugiri combo and use Toxic Spikes and Leech Seed. This sets up for a second Toxic Spikes and a Giga Drain to take out the Dondozo thanks to the second turn of Leech Seed chip. Kingdra comes out on the Toxic Spikes, which baits a full heal on the Kingdra, allowing us to Acid Spray the Tatsugiri as it rapid spins to dispel the Toxic Spikes. However, with Exeggutor being slower, we're then able to toss down a new layer of Leech Seed for another round of chip, and bait the Sushi Dragon into another rapid spin next turn to remove it again. From this spot, we can use one more Acid Spray and a Giga Drain to knock out the Tatsugiri, while Kingdra starts a bounce, aiming for Exeggutor on the following turn. With Whiscash coming out wanting to set up a Rain Dance, we can set up Toxic Spikes once again and use Giga Drain to take out the Catfish while undoing the damage from Kingdra's bounce. We're now in a 2v2 where Kingdra is always aiming to use bounce, which only does damage every other turn, and the Milotic, which is poisoned, Leech Seeded, and it's gonna have its special defense drop with Acid Sprays. It's gonna be a sitting duck until it inevitably goes down. After a few more turns, we finish the 2v1 on Kingdra and get our 7th badge. After another small round of shopping to pick up a few more TMs, we fly to Sootopolis City where we want to get our final gym badge. We're expecting Flannery as she's the only gym leader we haven't seen yet, and this should be a bit of a shoo-in for... wait. Maxie? So, if your final gym is Flannery, you have a 50% chance of potentially facing Maxie. The headcanon I have here is that Maxie may secretly be like Flannery's uncle or something. I got nothing for this one, but we'll go with it. Not that this really matters to us, as Maxie's actually an arguably easier matchup compared to Flannery 8, thanks to the plethora of non-fire types that we can actually abuse in this matchup. Maxie leads Mightyena, and we open with Guts Machamp to get a quick kill, even with the Intimidate dropping our attack stat. This brings out Crobat, who gets completely walled by Umbreon's bulk, setting up Tentacruel with the assist to clean up. Maxie's gonna try and turn up the heat with Mega Camera, but our Jellyfish just gets the one-shot with the Surf, and brings in Torkoal, who's gonna set up the Sun to mitigate our water attacks. Why you didn't choose to go Torkoal first is beyond me, but you know, we'll just take the freebies where we can get them. This Torkoal has Earthquake, so we switch into Wishiwashi, who has the bulk capable of walling all of the turtle's attacks, and we can use Dive in order to mitigate damage and stall out the Sun turns. Maxie's gonna try and catch us sleeping at the wheel with Yawn, but a switch to Gothitelle and then back to Wishiwashi on the following turn puts us back into position where the Sun's gonna fade away in time for Wishiwashi to get the takedown with another dive. The Anchor Aggron in the back brings massive dishonor to the Fire Gym's reputation by getting walled and packed up by Executor, and with that, we've obtained all 8 gym badges. Now that we have 8 badges, let's go on one final shopping trip before entering the Pokemon League. The final decision you need to make is whether or not you're going to purchase a Mega Stone. Mega Evolutions are actually balanced in Emerald Blitz as they only last 3 turns and immediately turn off as soon as you switch out. However, we don't actually have a Pokemon that can Mega Evolve, and this puts us at a bit of a disadvantage as we don't have a focal carry that's going to be our damage dealer or our primary option for the Elite Four. In order to compensate, we're going to be focused a little bit more on team play, so we need all 6 members of this Elite Four squad to have unique synergies that each member can play off of in order to get us set up for success. Our final team is going to end up being Bellossom, Executor, Gothitelle, Umbreon, Machamp, and Tentacruel. Wishiwashi, Beware, and Zoroark had some cool contributions during the gyms they partook in, but they don't have as flexible of a skill set for the team that we're going to need in order to have a good chance of beating the Elite Four and Wally. To round out the final bit of preparation, we fly to Fall Arbor Town to use one of our heart skills to have Bellossom learn Moonblast from the Move Relearner. With the remaining money in our bank account, we choose to buy 2 Shadow Ball TMs for Umbreon and Gothitelle, an ability patch to change Executor's ability from Chlorophyll to Harvest, and a Serious Mint in order to give Bellossom a neutral nature as opposed to a detrimental one. With that, our team is finalized, and we're gonna head straight into the Pokemon League. The Elite Four is largely similar to how you would expect in Vanilla Emerald, with the only exception being that each fight is a 50-50 between fighting the corresponding Elite Four member or a Frontier Brain in that corresponding spot. For our first Elite Four member, we end up fighting against Spencer. Our team would have had a safer run against Sydney, but we can still have an easy fight if luck rolls in our favor on Spencer. The fight opens with Bellossom versus Shiftry, and we choose to set up a Quiver Dance, luckily getting us Swagger Miss. This allows us to get a kill with Moonblast, bringing in Sceptile. We tank an X-Scissor, and after seeing Moonblast does less than half damage, we decide to switch into Machamp. This allows us to get the cleanup with a Guts boosted Facade, drawing out the Ace Breloom. Executor eats any of the moves for breakfast, and fires back with a Psychic, which will then bring out Ludicolo. And lastly, we can bring out Tentacruel, who cleans up both Ludicolo and the Hisuian Decidueye with a few Sludge Waves, as long as we don't get crit from the Leaf Blade on the Sombrero Owl. The second Elite Four member in our way is Phoebe. This is an incredible matchup for our team. Machamp is able to get massive damage off with a Bulk Up plus Knockoff, hitting through a Confusion to bring down the Leaf Dust Clouds. We decide to play a little risky and try for another knockoff on the Hisuian Typhlosion, this time dealing with a Smoke Screen, but we do snap out a Confusion. Naturally, we win the skill check again. The bulk of this battle is now a breeze, with Umbreon busting Banette's barrage of balls, brazen to the bust's cursed body blocking our buddy's bark. Dusknor comes out. With daring baby doll eyes, we bunker up against the bung up below the belt, body blows and back shots, and bring Big Bogey back to Baroness. Before long, Blackie breaks off Stabilized bid to bring about brilliance by booting bumper brains to the back of the bus. Bars. And that was Phoebe taken down in a kind of embarrassing 2v5. But that wasn't even the most embarrassing fight of the Elite Four. Stick around for that one. The third member is often considered one of the scariest of Your Old Glacia, with tales of being repeatedly frozen haunting the dreams of Emerald Blitz racers. Thankfully, we roll Tucker, who's a lot less of a threat. Before we start, we do a last-minute switch of Tentacruel's item to a Lumberry in order to prevent the lead Wigglytuff Sing from keeping us stuck asleep, which pays off, allowing us to finish off the berry balloon with a few sludge waves. On the incoming Galarian Rapidash, we can use Umbreon Shadow Ball and Bulk for a clean 1v1. We can go back into Tentacruel to take out the Togekiss, and with both healing items expended, the rest of the fight is going to be no issue for us. Gothitelle brings down the Ace Gardevoir, and Machamp sweeps up the Mawile to bring us to the penultimate battle. We pull up to the final Elite Four member, and we see Brandon, and instantly, I see blood in the water. This man is an absolute fraud. The Pokemon League does not have a single clock in the building. Otherwise, this man would have clocked out because he is about to find out it is Bellossom o'clock. Honestly, I don't even need to provide commentary. Just watch this montage of Bellossom rolling Brandon.
Poliwrath. Tentacool. Seeking. Poliwrath. Poliwrath.
Okay, we made it to the champion. As we walk into the final room, we see an epic clash between Steven and Wally, with Mega Gallade coming out on top. Wally's been crowned the new champion, but before he gets to walk into the Hall of Fame, we're gonna challenge him and show off the true potential of our team. We open the match with Gothitelle vs Roserade, where two Psychics get the frag. Leech Seed notably misses the first time, forcing Roserade to go for it 2 turns in a row. This is a really big turning point, as normally Roserade would want to set up Toxic Spikes, and we would have had to dispel them with Tentacruel, which would have been a little bit awkward since the next Pokemon to come out would have been Magnezone. With the field cleared of hazards, we can switch into Executor to set up a Leech Seed, where we see the ability Harvest bear fruit. Literally. After consuming our Citrus Berry, Harvest has a 50% chance of giving us another Citrus Berry while we're not holding an item. This effectively gives Executor infinite potential HP, allowing her to stay in for extended periods of time, even despite being paralyzed fully multiple turns in a row at the start. After Magnezone withers away, Garchomp comes out, but our giant tree is able to set up a Leech Seed and a Stun Spore in order to debilitate the dragon enough for Tentacruel to swap in for a kill with Ice Beam. Probably embarrassed by getting crossed up by a coconut tree, Wally brings out the big guns with his Mega Gallade to even up the fight. Unfortunately for him, a switch to Umbreon on the first Psycho Cut paves the road for his Nightmares to come back on a close combat, where after setting up a Leech Seed and getting a few more harvested berries, Gallade is unable to match Wally's anger and unmegas. Having foolishly attempted to chop down our tree with 3 close combats, Executor holds and is able to fire off a massive Giga Drain to bring down the Fire Emblem enthusiast. Executor has successfully accomplished his anchoring duties and can take a rest on the bench as Wally serves up a Spicy Bird and Talonflame. Umbreon comes in with the bird brain desperately trying to bash its head against our brick wall in hopes of maybe taking a single Pokemon with him, but to no avail. We cool off Nashville's hot chicken with help from Tentacruel, and all that's left is Wally's Azumarill. Bellossom comes in for the last dance, and with a few Giga Drains, that's it. We did it. We're the champions. But we didn't just win. We did it deathlessly. We weren't the first to beat Emerald Blitz, nor were we the first to beat Wally on his first weekend debut. We didn't do it the fastest, nor did we do anything that broke any new barriers. We aren't even the first to do a deathless run. This wasn't my first Hall of Fame or my first race win, and it definitely wasn't, or do I plan for it to be my last. But maybe this can be a first for something else. For someone else. Maybe you? I've been playing Emerald Blitz since the game became publicly available in December 2025, and it has easily become my favorite ROM hack of all time. While it may not have the difficulty, the expanded story, or full Pokemon availability like other ROM hacks, the community, the infinite playability, and the continued support from lead developer Nathan are what appeals the most to me. Emerald Blitz is a game you can play alone, but there's more fun to be had when you're playing a group. You can choose what Pokemon you want to use from the start out of the notebook, but there's so many different ways to customize how you start just by using the draft. You're never going to have the same playthrough twice. Even when you think you know your own playstyle, your own draft philosophy, when you're waiting at the door, waiting for the countdown alongside all of the other racers, anything's possible. I want to take a moment at the end here to say if you're interested in Emerald Blitz, please check out the official Emerald Blitz Discord and the Emerald Blitz website. The community is active and all information's well maintained for all fans of Pokemon to be equipped to begin racing. Also, on March 28th, Emerald Blitz will begin their first ever competitive circuit, the Evergrande Prix. More information is available in the Discord, but this is a great opportunity to enjoy this wonderful combination of Pokemon drafting, speedrunning, and Nuzlocking. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next race.